Here's the Perel angle. She never talks about fitness as mechanics. She talks about it as relationship. The relationship you have with effort, with your own body, with the belief that something only counts if it hurts. So the hook isn't about incline percentages or heart rate zones. It's about the story you've been telling yourself that fat loss has to be earned through suffering, that slower or gentler must mean weaker. That's the emotional wound this video quietly speaks to. Try something like, for years we were taught that intensity is the price of change, that if it doesn't hurt, it doesn't count, but the body doesn't actually work that way. Sometimes the thing that transforms you isn't the one demanding the most from you. It's the one your body can finally trust enough to let go. Then pivot into the treadmill reveal. This works because it reframes the video from here's a workout hack to here's why your relationship with exercise has been built on the wrong story, which is exactly the kind of emotional intimacy reframe that makes people stop scrolling because it feels like it's talking about them, not about a treadmill setting. I want to start with a question, and I want you to be honest with yourself when you answer it. How many times have you started an exercise routine? A hard one, an impressive one, the kind that leaves you sore for 3 days and quit within a month. Not because you were lazy, not because you didn't care enough, but because your body simply couldn't sustain the demand you were putting on it, and somewhere along the way you started to believe the failure was yours, when really it was the plan's. So we've been taught that transformation has to hurt to be real, that if a workout doesn't leave you breathless, shaking, collapsed on the floor, it couldn't possibly be doing enough. And so we chase intensity over and over, convinced that suffering is the price of change, only to end up injured, exhausted, or simply back at zero, wondering what's wrong with us. Nothing is wrong with you. The story was wrong, because right now, quietly, without any of the drama we've been sold, there is a workout outperforming running for fat loss in the research. One that barely raises a sweat, protects your joints instead of pounding them, and asks nothing more of you than a treadmill, an incline, and 30 unremarkable minutes. No sprinting, no suffering, no collapsing at the finish line. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why this works, what's actually happening inside your body when you do it, and why the version of fitness you were sold, the one built on pain, was never the one your body actually needed. Sometimes the thing that finally changes you isn't the one demanding the most. It's the one you can finally trust enough to keep doing. I want to start with something that's going to sound completely backwards, and I need you to trust me for the next few minutes while I walk you through why it isn't. There is a form of exercise quietly outperforming running for fat loss in study after study, and it barely raises a sweat. No sprinting, no pounding pavement, no gasping for air at the end of a session, just walking on an incline, and the data keeps showing the same thing over and over. For actual fat oxidation, not just calories burned, but fat specifically used as fuel. This boring form of movement is beating the workout we've spent decades treating as the gold standard. Now, I understand why that's hard to accept. We've been trained culturally to believe that exercise only counts if it hurts. If you're not drenched in sweat, if your legs aren't shaking, if you can still hold a conversation while you're doing it, surely it can't be doing much. That belief is so deeply wired into how we think about fitness that most people will hear what I just said and instinctively want to argue with it. But your body doesn't actually operate on the logic of the more it hurts, the more it works. Your body operates on chemistry, and the chemistry in this case tells a very different story than the one we've all been sold. Here's the trend I'm talking about, in case you haven't come across it. Sometimes called incline walking, sometimes known by a specific number combination that's been circulating widely. A moderate incline, a moderate speed, sustained for around half an hour. That's it. No intervals, no sprints, no equipment beyond a treadmill set at an angle. And when researchers have actually measured what's happening inside the body during sessions like this compared to running, the incline walking sessions are producing a higher percentage of energy sourced directly from fat stores. Not always more total calories. Running can still edge that out. But when we're specifically talking about fat as the fuel being burned, moderate sustained incline work is holding its own against, and in a lot of cases beating a much more punishing run. I want you to sit with how strange that actually is, given everything we've been taught. We've built an entire industry around the idea that transformation requires suffering, that if a workout isn't leaving you wrecked, it isn't real. Boutique gyms selling brutal hour-long classes, influencers filming themselves collapsing at the end of a session like it's proof of effort. An entire generation taught that gentler must mean weaker, that sustainable must mean lesser. And here we are looking at real physiological data showing that one of the most accessible, lowest impact forms of movement available to almost anyone is going toe-to-toe with running on the exact metric most people are actually chasing when they start exercising in the first place: losing fat. And this is exactly why I wanted to open with this before we get into any of the mechanism, before we talk about why this actually works inside your body, because I think the real barrier for most people isn't information, it's belief. belief. You have to actually believe that something this accessible, this low drama, this available to someone who's out of shape, recovering from injury, or simply exhausted after a long day could be doing real work before you'll ever give it a real chance. And right now, most people don't believe that because nobody told them the science existed. They just assumed, like most of us did, that if it isn't hard, it isn't helping. So here's what I want you to walk away with from this opening point, because everything else we talk about today builds directly on it. This isn't a hack, this isn't a shortcut or some trick to avoid real work. This is your body's own chemistry, operating exactly the way it's supposed to. Once you stop overriding it with intensity, it doesn't actually need for this particular goal. The workout beating running at fat loss isn't secretly harder than it looks. It's succeeding precisely because of how much easier it is to actually keep doing. Sometimes the thing that changes your body isn't the one demanding the most from you. It's the one your body can finally trust enough to keep showing up for. So, So let's actually talk about why this is true, because I don't want you walking away from this simply trusting me. I want you understanding your own body well enough that this makes complete sense by the time I'm done. And it all comes down to one concept most people have never been taught, even though it's been sitting in exercise physiology textbooks for decades. Your body doesn't burn one type of fuel. It burns a mix, and which fuel dominates that mix depends entirely on how hard you're working. Think of it like this. Your body has essentially two fuel tanks it can draw from during exercise. Stored fat, which is abundant, slow-burning, and nearly unlimited even on a lean person, and glycogen, which is stored sugar, fast-burning, limited in supply, and the fuel your body reaches for the moment things get intense. At rest and during low to moderate effort, your body happily runs primarily on fat. It's efficient, it's patient, it doesn't need to rush. But the moment your intensity climbs, the moment you're sprinting or pushing into a hard run where your breathing gets ragged and your heart rate spikes into a much higher zone, your body makes a switch. It shifts toward glycogen because glycogen can be accessed and burn much faster, and at high intensities, speed of fuel delivery matters more to your body than efficiency. This is the part that surprises almost everyone. That switch means a harder, faster run is often burning a smaller percentage of fat as fuel, not a larger one, even though it feels like the more serious workout. You're burning plenty of calories, don't get me wrong. Intensity absolutely burns energy, but a meaningful portion of that energy during a hard run is coming from sugar stores, not fat stores. Meanwhile, a sustained, moderate intensity effort, exactly the kind of pace you hold during an incline walk, keeps you sitting comfortably inside what physiologists actually call the fat burning zone. Not a marketing term, an actual measurable heart rate range where fat oxidation as a percentage of total fuel used peaks. So here's the picture I want you to have in your head. Running hard is like flooring the gas pedal, powerful, fast, but running heavily on the fuel that's quickest to access, which in your body's case is sugar. Incline walking is like cruising at a steady, sustainable speed. Slower, yes, but pulling consistently from the tank that was always the harder one to empty fat. And because incline walking can be sustained for a long time without exhausting you, without spiking your heart rate into that sugar-burning zone, you end up spending far more total time in the exact zone where fat is being preferentially used. Time in zone, it turns out, matters just as much as effort in the moment, maybe more. This also explains something a lot of you have probably experienced without ever understanding why. You go for a hard run, you're starving an hour later, ravenous in a way that feels disproportionate to how long you actually exercise. That's not a coincidence. High-intensity effort burns through glycogen fast, and your body, sensing those sugar stores running low, sends a strong hunger signal to go refill them, often pushing you toward exactly the quick carbohydrates that got depleted in the first place. Steady, moderate incline work doesn't create nearly the same glycogen depletion spiral, which means it doesn't come with nearly the same rebound hunger either. You're not just burning fat more efficiently during the session. You're not sabotaging yourself with compensatory eating afterward. I want to be clear about something because I don't want this to be misheard. Running is genuinely good for you. Cardiovascular health, bone density, mental health benefits, none of that goes away. This isn't an argument against running. This is an argument against the assumption that harder always means better for the specific goal of fat loss, because your body's fuel switching mechanism simply doesn't work that way. Intensity has its purpose. But if fat loss is actually the goal sitting behind the workout, intensity isn't the lever you think it is. Your body was never impressed by how hard you pushed. It was always paying attention to how long you stayed in the zone that actually mattered. Now let's talk about what's actually happening in your body when you tilt that treadmill up, because there's something else going on here that most people completely miss. This isn't just cardio with better fuel economics. What you're doing without realizing it is quietly performing resistance training at the same time, and that combination is exactly why this works as well as it does. Walk on a flat surface, and your body has gravity doing very little demanding work on your muscles. You're mostly swinging your legs forward, letting momentum carry you, using the same handful of muscle groups in a pattern so efficient your body body barely has to try. Add an incline, even a moderate one, and the entire mechanics of the movement change. Now you're pushing your own body weight upward against gravity with every single step. Your glutes have to fire harder to drive that motion. Your hamstrings engage in a way they simply don't on flat ground. Your calves are working through a much greater range of motion, pushing off against resistance instead of just carrying you forward. You are essentially doing a slow, sustained, repeated leg press for 30 minutes without ever labeling it that way in your head. This is why incline walking can raise your heart rate into an effective working zone without ever requiring you to run. You don't need speed to create demand on your cardiovascular system when you've replaced flat ground with an uphill climb. The incline itself is doing the work that speed would otherwise have to do. And here's what's elegant about that. Because the intensity is coming from grade rather than pace, you get an elevated heart rate and real muscular engagement without your joints ever having to absorb the repeated high-impact pounding that comes with running. Let's be specific about what running actually does to your body mechanically, because I don't think people fully appreciate it. Every single stride you take while running involves a moment where your entire body weight, sometimes 2 to 3 times your body weight, depending on your pace and form, comes crashing down through one leg, transmitted through your ankle, your knee, your hip. Over a single run, that might happen well over 1,000 times. Over a running habit sustained across months and years, that's an enormous cumulative load moving through joints that were not necessarily built to withstand that kind of repetitive impact indefinitely, especially in someone who's out of shape, coming back from time off, or simply getting older. Incline walking essentially eliminates that entire category of stress. You always have at least one foot in contact with the ground. There's no airborne phase, no crashing impact, no shock wave traveling up through your skeleton with every stride. So what you're actually left with is something quite remarkable when you put it all together. A workout that recruits major lower body muscle groups the way resistance training does, elevates your heart rate into a genuinely effective cardiovascular zone, and does all of it while placing dramatically less mechanical stress on your joints than running does. You're not choosing between strength and cardio. You're not choosing between building muscle and burning fat. The incline is quietly giving you pieces of all three stacked into a single low-impact session that most people walk away from thinking they did something gentle, when their glutes and hamstrings the next day will tell a very different story. This is exactly why the "it's too easy to be effective" instinct so many of you have right now is misleading you. Effective doesn't have to look violent. It doesn't have to leave you gasping against a wall. Your body doesn't award extra fat loss points for suffering. It responds to sustained muscular engagement and sustained time in the right physiological zone. And incline walking is quietly delivering both, disguised as something that looks on the surface like the easiest workout in the buildings. So the next time you watch someone step onto an incline treadmill at a moderate pace and think that looks too simple to matter, I want you to remember what's actually happening underneath that simplicity. Muscles working, heart rate elevated, joints protected. That's not a shortcut. That's your body finally being asked to work the way it was built to. Now, I want to talk about the part of running culture almost nobody wants to say out loud because it's uncomfortable, and because running has such a beloved, almost sacred status in fitness circles that questioning it can feel like heresy. But the numbers here are too consistent to keep ignoring. Running has one of the highest injury rates of any common form of exercise, and for a huge number of people, especially the people this conversation is actually for, it isn't the fat loss tool it's marketed as, it's the thing that sidelines them before they ever get the chance to see results. The research on this is remarkably consistent. Depending on which study you look at, somewhere between a third and more than half of regular runners experience some kind of overuse injury within a given year. Shin splints, runner's knee, stress fractures, Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis. These aren't rare, unlucky outcomes happening to a careless few. They are statistically closer to the expected cost of doing business for a huge portion of people who take up running seriously. And here's the group that gets hit hardest by this: beginners, people returning to exercise after years away, people carrying extra weight who are ironically told that running is the fastest way to lose it at the exact moment their joints are least prepared to absorb the repeated impact that running demands. Think about how backwards that actually is. The person who most needs a sustainable entry point into exercise is routinely handed the exercise most likely to injure them before they build the base fitness required to handle it safely. Someone 30 or 40 pounds overweight, sedentary for years, decides today is the day, laces up, and goes for a run. And that decision, however well-intentioned, is loading joints that haven't handled that kind of repetitive impact in a very long time, sometimes ever. It's not that their body is fragile. It's that we've handed people a high-impact tool as if it were a beginner's tool and then acted surprised when so many of them get hurt, get discouraged, and quietly stop exercising altogether. And that's really the part I want you to sit with, because the injury itself is only half the damage. The other half is what happens after. Someone gets shin splints 3 weeks into a new running habit, and it's not just a physical setback, it becomes a psychological one. They start to believe exercise simply isn't for them, that their body can't handle it, that they tried and it didn't work and maybe it never will. Nobody explains to them that the problem wasn't their body's capability. It was the mismatch between where they actually were and the demand they were asked to meet. So instead of adjusting the workout, they abandon the goal entirely, and that door often stays closed for a long time after. This is exactly where incline walking earns its place in this conversation, because it solves the actual problem most people are facing, which was never really, how do I burn the most calories in the shortest time? It was, how do I do something consistently enough for long enough without getting hurt or burned out that my body actually has the chance to change? Consistency beats intensity every single time, for the simple reason that a workout you can't sustain because it injured you or exhausted you produces exactly zero long-term results. The best workout in the world on paper is worthless to someone who can only do it twice before their knee gives out. Incline walking sidesteps almost the entire injury conversation. Low impact, joint friendly, approachable for someone who hasn't exercised in years, and just as effective for someone who's already fit and simply wants a smarter, more sustainable tool in their routine. And it's not that running is bad. I want to be careful here, because plenty of people run for decades without major issues, and running offers real benefits nothing else fully replicates. But if the goal in front of you is fat loss and the honest picture of your current fitness level says you're not ready to absorb that kind of repeated impact yet, incline walking gives your body the chance to actually get there without a shin splint or a stress fracture deciding the outcome for you 3 weeks in. The workout that changes your body isn't the one that looks the most impressive on day one. It's the one still standing, unbroken, still showing up 6 months later. Now I want to ask a question that I think most people have simply never stopped to consider. Because it's been repeated so many times, it stopped sounding like a claim at all and started sounding like a fact of nature. Who decided that exercise has to hurt to count? Because I promise you, that idea did not arrive by accident. It was built, marketed, and sold to you decade after decade by an industry with a very specific financial interest in you believing it. Think about what actually sells in the fitness world. It's not the quiet, sustainable 30-minute incline walk. It's the transformation photo. It's the workout so brutal you can barely walk the next day. It's the influencer collapsing on camera at the end of a session, because that image sells something. It sells the idea that suffering is proof of progress, that if you're not wrecked afterward, you didn't really try. Boutique studios built entire business models around this. Extreme fitness programs became cultural phenomena specifically because they promised transformation through punishment. And punishment, it turns out, is remarkably easy to market. It looks dramatic. It photographs well. It gives people a story to tell. No pain, no gain isn't a scientific principle. It's a slogan, and slogans get repeated because they're useful to someone, not because they're true. And here's who it's useful to: an industry that profits enormously from you needing something new every few months. A new program, a new class package, a new supplement to help you recover from how hard you just pushed yourself, has very little incentive to tell you that a 30-minute walk on an incline might get you further than the $800 boot camp package. Sustainable, boring, accessible solutions don't drive repeat purchases the way dramatic, punishing ones do. If the answer is walk consistently, moderately for half an hour several times a week, there's no exciting transformation story to sell around that. No dramatic before and after built on suffering. No premium program justifying a premium price. The truth in this case simply isn't as good for business as the myth. This is the same pattern, by the way, that we've talked about elsewhere. An industry shaping what you believe, not because it's what actually works best for you, but because it's what works best for them. We've seen it with food. We've seen it with the products sold to us as healthy that weren't. And here it is again in fitness, wearing a slightly different costume. The idea that gentler must mean weaker, that moderate must mean insufficient, that if a workout doesn't leave you devastated, it couldn't possibly be doing anything. And I want to name what this actually costs people, because it's not abstract. It's the person who tries an extreme program, can't sustain it, gets hurt, or burns out within a few weeks and walks away believing they failed. And when the truth is the program was never designed with sustainability in mind to begin with. It's the person who skips exercise entirely because every option presented to them looks brutal, intimidating, built for people already in far better shape than they are. The no pain, no gain myth doesn't just mislead people about physiology, it actively pushes people out of fitness altogether by making moderate, sustainable, genuinely effective options feel like they don't count. Here's what I want you to actually take from this, because I think it's the most freeing thing I can tell you today. The workout that most reliably changes your body over time was never required to hurt in order to work. Consistency, sustained over months, is doing more of the heavy lifting than intensity ever was. And once you stop needing a workout to be punishing in order to trust that it's legitimate, an entire world of accessible, sustainable options opens back up, options that were quietly working all along, while an industry kept insisting you needed to suffer more to deserve results. So the next time a workout feels almost too easy to be real, I don't want your first instinct to be suspicion. I want it to be curiosity, because sometimes the thing that finally works isn't the one shouting the loudest about how hard it is. It's the one that was patient enough to let your body actually keep showing up. Brock? So let's make this practical, because I don't want you leaving here today with a head full of physiology and no idea what to actually do with it tomorrow morning. Everything we've talked about, the fuel switching, the muscle engagement, the injury data, the industry incentives stacked against you knowing any of this, all of it should collapse down into something simple enough that you could start today. Without a coach, without a gym membership, without overthinking a single part of it. Here's the structure, and I'm going to keep it as uncomplicated as the workout itself deserves to be. Set a treadmill to a moderate incline somewhere in the range most people find becomes genuinely challenging without tipping into breathless, roughly a 12% grade if your machine allows it, though anywhere from 6 to 15% will still give you real results depending on your current fitness level. Set your pace to a brisk walk, not a jog, fast enough that you're working, slow enough that you could still hold a conversation if someone was walking beside you. And hold that for around 30 minutes. That's the entire formula. No intervals to track, no heart rate monitor required, though it can help if you have one. No complicated programming. Incline, moderate pace, 30 minutes. Done. Now, if that number sounds intimidating to someone who hasn't been active in a while, I want to be very clear. You do not need to start at that incline or hold it for that long on day one. This is exactly the kind of workout that rewards a gradual build. Start at a lower incline, 4 or 5% TARs for 15 or 20 minutes, and simply let your body adapt over the coming weeks. Add a little incline every week or two, add a few minutes to your duration as it starts to feel more comfortable. There is no prize for jumping straight to the advanced version and injuring yourself in week one, which, if you remember what we talked about earlier, defeats the entire purpose of choosing something sustainable in the first place. As for frequency, 3 to 5 sessions a week is a reasonable target for most people, though even 2 or 3 consistent sessions weekly will move the needle over time compared to nothing at all. And here's something important I want you to hear clearly. This doesn't have to replace everything else you're doing. If you already lift weights, if you already enjoy running, if you have a routine that's working for you in other ways, Incline walking slots in beautifully as a low-impact addition, something you can do on recovery days, on days you're tired, on days when a hard workout feels like too much, but doing absolutely nothing doesn't feel right either. It's not asking to be the only tool in your toolbox. It's asking to be the reliable one, the one you can always fall back on, no matter how your energy, your schedule, or your body is doing on any given day. I also want to say something about consistency that I think gets lost in most fitness advice. The reason this particular workout tends to actually produce results isn't because it's secretly more powerful than everything else out there. It's because people actually keep doing it. A moderate, joint-friendly, sustainable session that you complete 4 times a week for 6 months will beat an intense, exciting program you manage for 3 weeks before burning out or getting hurt every single time. Adherence isn't a soft, secondary factor in fitness. It is, in a very real sense, the entire game. The best workout was never the one with the most impressive numbers on paper. It's the one still happening on a random Tuesday evening months from now when nobody's watching and the motivation that got you started has long since faded. So here's what I want you to do. Not next month, not once you've bought the right shoes or read one more article about this. Tomorrow, set the incline. Pick a pace you can hold a conversation at. Walk for however long feels honest to where you're actually starting from today. And let it be boring, let it be unremarkable, because the workouts that actually change your body rarely look impressive while they're happening. They just quietly keep happening week after week until one day you look back and realize that the simplest thing you did was the thing that finally worked. I want to start with a question, and I want you to be honest with yourself when you answer it. How many times have you started an exercise routine, a hard one, an impressive one, the kind that leaves you sore for 3 days and quit within a month? Not because you were lazy, not because you didn't care enough, but because your body simply couldn't sustain the demand you were putting on it. And somewhere along the way, you started to believe the failure was yours, when really it was the plans. We've been taught that transformation has to hurt to be real, that if a workout doesn't leave you breathless, shaking, collapsed on the floor, it couldn't possibly be doing enough. And so we chase intensity over and over, convinced that suffering is the price of change, only to end up injured, exhausted, or simply back at zero, wondering what's wrong with us. Nothing is wrong with you. The story was wrong, because right now, quietly, without any of the drama drama we've been sold, there is a workout outperforming running for fat loss in the research, one that barely raises a sweat, protects your joints instead of pounding them, and asks nothing more of you than a treadmill, an incline, and 30 unremarkable minutes. No sprinting, no suffering, no collapsing at the finish line. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why this works, what's actually happening inside your body when you do it, and why the version of fitness you were sold, the one built on pain, was never the one your body actually needed. Sometimes the thing that finally changes you isn't the one demanding the most. It's the one you can finally trust enough to keep doing.